As the deadline for public comments for proposed amendments to the Road Accident Fund bill approaches, concerns are being raised over how those injured in accidents on the country's roads will be affected. The deadline for comments is this Sunday. To expand on this and get some reaction, we're joined by Dave Campbell, who's co-chair of the KwaZulu-Natal Personal Injury Association. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika. The deadline's looming. You've expressed your concerns over the impact the amendments will have. But before we touch on your concerns, perhaps help us understand the gravity of the proposed amendments, the historical context.
Good evening, Mpho. Thanks very much for having me on this evening. Yes, historically, in South Africa, we used to have compulsory vehicle insurance, where the driver would have to purchase their own insurance disc and display it on their vehicle. And then in 1996, when the Road Accident Fund was formed, they did away with that and switched to a system whereby they would act as the statutory insurer, and they would collect these insurance premiums by means of adding an amount onto the fuel levy, meaning the more you drove, the more fuel you used, the higher the premium you paid, and it seemed like a relatively effective way of collecting the premium. But it's important to remember that the Road Accident Fund stepped into the shoes of the wrongdoer, and so instead of suing the wrongdoing driver, the innocent victim would sue the Road Accident Fund and would be entitled to what they would ordinarily in common law have been entitled to, but for the existence of the fund.
Mm-hmm. Critics of this bill say that if this bill is passed, it will pose a grave threat to the rights and well-being of accident victims. Are you of the same view?
Absolutely. As an example, under the current legislation as it stands, if you sustained a very serious injury and you were not to blame for the accident, you would receive damages made up of various heads. One would be what we call general damages, which is a lump sum amount for pain, suffering, loss of the amenities of life, disfigurement, etc. And another would be special damages, which would be things like your past loss of income, your future loss of income or earning potential as a result of your injuries. And as well as you'd be entitled to reimbursement of all your prior reasonable medical expenses and as well as your future medical expenses. Now, that same person under the new bill, if it went through, would receive nothing for general damages, nothing for special damages. They would receive medical expenses, but only on a tariff yet to be decided by the fund, but looking at their previous attempts to pass similar bills will be the state patient's tariff, effectively meaning that you'd also lose your right to medical expenses because although you can go to a private institution, you're not going to be able to recoup those expenses. And in its place, you'd receive what they refer to as a social benefit. Now, there's no definition in the Act of what that social benefit is. It's yet still to be determined at some future stage. But looking at the comments made by the CEO and the Deputy Minister of Transport, it appears that that social benefit is going to be a fixed amount, irrespective of the actual loss you suffered, that it will be paid in an annual annuity, either monthly or annually, and it appears to be similar to a social grant.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. In the instance, perhaps, of a hit and run where the victim is unable to maybe identify the owner of a vehicle, I know that currently a claim can still be pursued. Does it mean that under this new amendment that will not be the case?
No. What I'd outlined was the absolute best case scenario that you'd get medical expenses on a tariff and that you'd receive a social benefit. However, there's a host of new exceptions where you receive absolutely nothing at all. Hit and run claims, previously you would be able to claim. Now, unless you can identify the owner or driver of the vehicle, you will receive no compensation at all. If you were a pedestrian crossing a highway, you would receive no compensation at all, even if the accident was not your fault, which is a particular concern considering a very large portion of our population are forced to walk alongside and cross over highways because, frankly, they have no other alternative. And now, if they were involved in a collision, which is most likely to be a very serious collision, and they're also most likely to be the people who don't have private medical aid or insurance. They would not be able to bring a claim against the wrongdoing driver, and they would not have a claim against the fund. Because the one thing I think I failed to emphasize was when the road accident fund was implemented, they took away, well, it actually had been taken away before, they took away your common law rights. So you were no longer allowed to sue the wrongdoing driver. In its place, you sued the road accident fund, which was fine because you were receiving adequate compensation. But this new bill still takes away your common law right, but also takes away most of your benefits. And at the same token, there's no mention of them stopping collecting the fuel levy, which is approximately 45 billion rand a year in what's effectively insurance premiums, which should belong to the innocent accident victims.
So in weighing in and adding your comments, what are you highlighting as you ventilate some of these frustrations?
Well, one of the main issues is that in law, everyone is equal. Everyone has equal access to benefits and rights. So how can they justify discriminating against an accident victim? Whereas, for example, if I receive a bodily injury from a dog bite, a slip and trip, a medical malpractice, an assault, any other cause other than accident, I'm entitled to sue for my full damages, my full general damages, my full special damages, my full medical expenses. Why is it that if I'm an accident victim now, those rights are taken away from me? Why is it that if I'm one of the other issues in the new act is if you're not a South African citizen or permanent resident, you're not entitled to claim from the fund, even though you're the innocent party, you're in the country legally, and you are contributing to the fund by your fuel levy.
Yeah, because the argument there is that if you're a foreign national, you should essentially have your own insurance to cover you in such an instance.
But then you can't take away that foreign national's right to sue the wrongdoer. You know, at the moment, if I assaulted someone, they can sue me for their bodily injuries. If I wait and I get in my car and I purposely drive over them, in terms of this act, they cannot sue me. And if I drive over them, you know, for example, if they're not on a public road, currently any accident within the Republic is covered. Now, if you're in an accident on the public road, unless you're in an accident on the public road, you're not covered. Another example would be if you have an accident with a train, they've now excluded that. So you could be in a bus and your driver negligently collides into a pole meters from a train intersection and you'd have a claim. If, however, he continues through the red robot and collides into the train, you now no longer have a claim. You can't sue him because that right's been taken away from you, and you obviously have no claim against the train or crosser because they're not the negligent party.
Yeah.
So you're left with no recourse at all.
Very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for weighing in here. We're going to have to leave it there for now.